Welcome back to the Torque Test channel. Testing oil filter tools is like therapy, I'm telling you. Struggle with an oil filter wrench basically as much as possible. It of course doesn't budge an inch on this thing, and then just casually plopping it off and carrying it away. For anyone who's seen enough of these things, it's like a max dose of Prozac being able to end things this simply. Yes, today we revisit oil filter tools to see which are the grippiest in the categories of coming in from the top access to the oil filter and side access approaches using tools you all recommended in the comments. Last time out, using the type of tools we typically use, we even got called out for being in the pocket of Big Oil Filter Co. for not featuring your favorite fix for foolishly fastened filters. So today we're including these tools that we missed according to you guys, such as strap and chain wrenches of multiple types, cap socket style wrenches, and adjustable cup style wrenches, all purchased by us as usual, and by popular demand, comparing all that to how much grippy action is going to be managed by hand, something I agree we should probably include. So let's get into it, starting with side access tools, or ones you might have more space beside the filter than above it. We tested oil filter pliers last time for this sort of thing, but today we're starting with rubber strap wrenches. This pair was $17, and there's both what they call medium and large sized wrenches, I guess if you can call these wrenches. They operate pretty simply: cinch them in close and tight, and then turn. We'll be using the same make and model of oil filters today as last time. On the smaller side of things, we've got a Nissan Pathfinder, Nissan Altima oil filter. Probably easily able to get a case of these things due to how often Altima owners are doing regular scheduled maintenance. And we also have a larger sized Volvo oil filter. Basically thread down, then weld in place a hex-headed bolt. And now we can turn these filters in reverse as much as needed to replicate a very stuck-on filter, like the last person who serviced this vehicle clearly hates you. So let's get a baseline. How much turning power I'd normally see with side access to an oil filter, which means more often able to get two hands on it, though going to be doing one hand coming up too. And this is, this is a safe space, right, guys? We're not judging here. We're just 11.7 foot-pounds on the smaller filter, which goes down even lower when using one hand, not surprisingly. And this is using a bare hand instead of latex gloves. We're going to be following that with rubber dip gloves. Listen, this is a good time as any to explain what force over distance is as a measurement, right? 10 foot-pounds is 10 pounds of force at the end of a 1 foot long lever. The smaller filter is, in this case, like a 1 1/4 inch long lever. That's its radius. And the larger filter is like 1 3/4 inches long, as a wrench would be comparing to that. So the 11.9 barehanded and 13 with gloves is 114 to 125 foot-pounds. That same amount of turning force was applied to a 1 foot long lever. Really, it's actually pretty impressive if you think about it. Okay, so basically saying the turny grip you're getting with these by hand is probably less than you thought, or at least it was humbling for me to see it. And at least in these Olympics, these gloves, these rubber dipped ones, take it. Here is with Archimedes' help, some actual leverage in the form of a rubber strap wrench. This is going to see 37, 53, 45.7, 61.8 foot-pounds, starting to crush in the sides a bit now. And while we intended to use the larger strap wrench just on the larger filter here, figured give it a go on this small one as well, in case you have the space for it, to see what it could do. 65.2, 53, peaks up to 84.9 before quickly crushing into itself a lot more now. This is about what she's got in her, which is damn good, beating the best 2-plier type tools that we've tested to date. And yeah, just barely passing up my by hand numbers in there too. On the larger Volvo oil filter wrench, this sort of caves in the side almost instantly, but getting 100 foot-pounds out of it along the way. And then we see 83 and the mid 40s from there. Wasn't able to improve, but yet again, best to date. So you guys were onto something, suggesting strap type wrenches for sure. I do feel they take up a little bit more room than pliers types, given there's a little bit of swing, like rotation you need before it applies that grip, but looking good so far. Next up at $17.50 is this oil filter chain wrench from Mutt Tools. Purchased this one because it has teeth-like ridges on the links where many of the ones just were chains. The downside of this tool is what I'd call its resolution. Each link in the chain has to be sort of suited for the exact diameter you're working on. Otherwise, that setting is too small or sometimes just skates on the surface and doesn't dig in. Case in point, on the larger oil filter, it worked intuitively, like it just gripped 76, 78 foot-pounds, 86 foot-pounds, and the chain's done a number on the outside shell. Couldn't get any further than that. With another attempt on the smaller filter, the closest chain link setting was a bit too tight to fit on the filter, but could, as it turns out, be pressed and wiggled onto it, and that's going to be the ticket. The effectiveness of this tool, and it is effective, is going to depend on the thing you're working on being just over one of these size settings and not somewhere loosely in the middle. 102.6 here though, and it's really managed, not that you'd care much if it threads off and you're going to put a new one on, to really mangle this thing. Coming in at just 50 cents more than that is this $18 oil filter socket chain wrench. Purchased this because of this wide chain design that looked beefier than traditional chain wrenches. And this tool, and the Gearwrench coming up as well, if you put a breaker bar on it or ratchet straight on them, they are side access like the others here. But you could use an extension and turn these into sort of top access tools with a little chunk on the side as well when you're turning that filter. This tool, despite advertising just up to 200 millimeters in capacity and no minimum size, seems to want something mid to large size in diameter because it just plain doesn't work on a 2.6 inch diameter filter like this. It keeps looking like it's going to be set up to bind in on itself and catch, but just never gets there. Just isn't going to happen, which is a shame because it sort of rocks when it does catch. Here on the 3.6 inch diameter filter, has no problem winding up then binding in on itself. No hesitation, just grabs, and as we've seen, it's the thin wall of these filters that gives out first, so a wide chain helps with contact patch spreading out that torque. For 102, which is a ton, in another caved in severed filter case. Jumping up a whole $10 now, we have the Gearwrench strap wrench. This, or a version of, or a homemade flavors of this sort of thing, like using a seatbelt, were the #1 requested type of tool in our last video, which of course featured tools we might buy, then we buy what you guys write in the comments. You can drive it with either a 3/8 or a 1/2 inch drive tool. The ends of this bar link have drive ends on both sides. It's pretty cool. It's also made in the US, which is cool again, and explains some of that cost difference. This will make you look pretty silly if you don't know how to set it up. I mean, I'm just showing you this obviously to demonstrate that fact, but the trick is to not fully cinch up this belt and tighten it. What you want to do is leave a little bit of slack for this hoop to rotate into and begin binding in on itself, between itself and the filter, sandwiching those things, and then you start to get some real action up into the 50s, 80s, 108.7, 98. Now the filter is basically a shriveled carcass. Could only get back into the 90s after this. It also works on the larger filter diameter, 63.9, 78.8, 87, and it's starting to twist in on itself despite pulling towards myself to try to get it to stop that. And once this is caved in from doing that, the numbers don't go up any further, which means we can rank these side access type tools. Let's see it. If you take the amount of turning each one of these could do and average it across the two sizes of filter they perform that on, that looks like 92.9, 94.7, 102.4 sort of, and 97.8. This one couldn't work on small filters, so gets grouped with this Mac Tools that we bought that also has that going on for it. With Gearwrench overall, their strap wrench on top, can recommend. My only concern with this one is when you budge that filter free, it's going to get doused in oil. And this is one of the few, maybe only tools on the list today that you can't clean off fully with some brake clean if it soaks some of that up. So long-term use, maybe you guys in the comments can chime in using these things. Mainly use filter pliers and sockets around here. The chain wrench put up the numbers, but I'd say it can be questionable if it will always perform this way due to that chain link spacing. Really, both of these strap wrenches types are the ones I'd reach for after using them, with this having the edge based on having the option to use an extension and reach a filter from the top. Okay, moving on to top access type oil filter tools. The type of thing when you're staring down deep into an engine bay or up into one and can only see the oil filter head. This is how much torque, well, I'm getting on those, like turning a 1¼ inch long ratchet. You're not going to get a whole lot from this much leverage. The rubber dip gloves come out ahead again, but either way you look at it, 7 to 8 up to 11 foot-pounds. Even if you install the filter hand tight with oil on that rubber gasket, all nice like heat and cooling expansion of different materials at different rates, you can often take more than that to remove. Starting with oil filter cap sockets, cap wrench sockets, however you want to call them, we bought 2 brands, Steelman and OEM Tools, in case one really sucks, it doesn't spoil the bunch. But these are often sold in whole sets, as you need to accurately both match the diameter of the filter and the number of flutes, as they say it, or flats as I would call it. So to order these models, needed to know both the diameter and count the flats on these filters. And to cover a fair amount of vehicles, you need at least a $55 set like this. So let's see how they do. These are basically begging for an extension. That way you can reach deep into where, oh yeah, this is done. Didn't even have time to talk about this tool. Yikes, 18.7 foot-pounds. That's not great. It feels stuck on there like it's the right size and number of flats, but just spinning now. Okay, and here's the OEM Tools. On the larger filter, 30.4, 69.9. Nice, okay. That is a lot in the grand scheme of things for an oil filter. Won't be getting any metals today, but we at least learned don't buy the Steelman, as the filter looked fine when removed. The flats were not rounded over. These are the most common, of course, stamped steel sheet metal type that you'd find in an auto parts store or Harbor Freight. There are machined ones like Motivix. I know these are popular, but they didn't make the sizes we need for both of these filters. And an equivalent set to the OEM Tools would be about $310 when you need this many pieces. So if you only ever see one type of oil filter and they make that size for you, it might be worth a look. Okay, and on to the next most popular, commonly mentioned, how did you not include that tools, is the Lisle half cup style oil filter wrenches. Very familiar with these as well. You'll also see these on tool trucks under other brands. We didn't buy them last time because you need 2 different models to do the same size range as the single tools we were also purchasing, but realistically, somehow these are both like $12 and $13 while being USA made. $25-ish to do the full range, both of these combined, assuming these don't suck. That's pretty reasonable, as the Lisle 3-leg wrench we tested last time was $25 by itself, and that wasn't very good. These are a cool design, spring-loaded. You sort of ratchet backwards, and in that direction you're going to open them and then forwards to tighten them onto the filter. They also, despite looking a bit funky and not seating all the way up against the top of that filter due to some hardware in the way, really grip and rip. I'm talking 101.7, 110, spiking up to 130 before the filter suddenly caves in a bit more. It can still pop off the filter sometimes, wanting to cam out a bit, not fully sitting flush on the top of that filter. But this is one where I needed to grab the 1/2-inch ratchet we ultimately used on the Work Pro last time to finish the job. Every other tool so far not needing this to be maxed out. 73.8, and she's caving in a bit more, but this does have some bite beyond just squeezing down on things. 115.5, 135.8, and now she's really finely stripped. Not just sliding off, could not improve from there. The larger tool on the larger filter basically works the same way. The larger dome of this one on the filter raises the body of the tool a bit further off of the filter though, so camming off is something you do have to try to resist from happening, as it results in slipping off early, which happens on the 3-jaw models as well, but eventually 74, 103, 103 foot-pounds after that, she's pretty well cooked. The last example we're going to include today in the top filter access crowd is this Spurtar, which is oddly more expensive than either Lisle at $16, despite not being USA made, of course. And this thing, I mean, it was nice enough to not take up a lot of our time, not to say that you're going to often need more than 80 foot-pounds, let's be realistic, but it is also a one-and-done tool on the day. The only one to just flat-out break. It hit 88 and then 87. It's a cool design, but if anything, could use less grip in order to survive longer. So let's tally some tools. Since these were a different brand, these socket cups, we'll say it did at least what the OEM Tools could do at 69.9 as a total, then 119.4, and this gets halved for bowing out early, with 44.2. And that makes the Lisle just take first place overall. Yeah, sort of love to see it really. US tools that aren't even expensive, far from it, $12, $13, and $25, taking the bragging rights. I'm going to point out that kind of W whenever possible for sure. Appreciate you joining us today. We make episodes like this every Friday, and thanks for watching.